Hello and welcome to the Consistory of the Calc YouTube video. I'm your host for this video, Reverend Jake Zabel, the St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church located in Dalby, Queensland, Australia. On today's video, I want to discuss the topic of should Lutherans have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? So, in my previous video, I talked about whether Lutherans should do the imposition of ashes on Ash Wednesday, and I explained why we shouldn't, and I also explained the history of why Lutherans historically haven't done that. But I wanted to talk about the topic of whether we should have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday, because I know some Lutheran churches that do, and the question is why? Why do we have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? Should we have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? Now, to start off with, can we have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? Of course you can. It's adiaphora. You can have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday, or you can not have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday. It's not going to make a difference. My advice, however, is why would you do that? See, the Book of Concord, particularly the Augsburg Confession, makes this point that the Lutheran Church retains Holy Communion for every Sunday and every feast day. We celebrate feast days like the Annunciation of Christ, the Visitation of Christ, Pentecost, Ascension, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday. These are feast days when we celebrate the death and resurrection of Christ. We celebrate the birth, the coming of Christ. And so we celebrate those days and we feast with Holy Communion. However, when it comes to Lent and the season of Advent, they are normally seasons of fasting. Now someone will say, well, do we not have communion at all during the season of Lent? And no, this is because Lent, the 40 days of Lent, does not actually include the Sundays. Every Sunday is a feast day because every Sunday is a mini Easter. Every Sunday is a reminder of the resurrection of Christ. So we actually feast on every Sunday. So we should have communion every Sunday. So even during Lent and Advent, we do not give up Holy Communion. However, on the midweek services, whether that be in Lent or Advent, they're fast days. They're days where people either have a Matins or a Vespers service, or like in my congregation, we will just have a service of confession absolution. So we will do a service without Holy Communion. We won't do the Holy Communion, but we will have confession absolution. It is a service of fasting. It is a service of humility. It's not a service of feasting. And the thing is, Ash Wednesday is the same thing. Ash Wednesday is merely the first day of Lent. It's merely the first Wednesday in the season of Lent. And as I talked about in my previous video on the imposition of ashes, I looked at the historical Lutheran lectionaries and how the Lutheran lectionaries of the 1800s and early 1900s did not even contain readings or prayers for Ash Wednesday. Even Luther's contemporary Dietrich back in the 1500s wrote collects for the Lutheran churches to pray every Sunday, and Dietrich does not include a collect for Ash Wednesday. But he does for other feast days, such as the Annunciation of Christ to the Virgin Mary, Pentecost, even Pentecost Monday, the Monday following Pentecost, gets a special collect. He has a collect for Trinity Sunday. He even has a collect for All Saints Day. But Dietrich does not include a collect for Ash Wednesday, showing that the early Lutherans did not make a big deal of celebrating Ash Wednesday as a feast day. Ash Wednesday was merely the first day of Lent, the first day of the fasting season, the first midweek service of the season of Lent. Ash Wednesday wasn't Ash Wednesday for the Lutherans. It's just the first Wednesday of Lent. And this was something that the Reformers did. This was something that the early Lutherans did. This is something that the Synodical Conference Lutherans did. And it's something that only really changed as we now get into the mid-1900 Lutheran churches. Historically, Lutherans did not practice Ash Wednesday as a feast day. They didn't see it as a major day. Therefore, since it's not a feast day, since it's not a major day, it's not a major event in the church year, then it's not really a day to celebrate Holy Communion. It's no different to the other Wednesdays in Lent. If you're not going to have Holy Communion every midweek Wednesday service in Lent, then why have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? There is no reason to have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday, but not have Holy Communion on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, etc. Wednesdays of Lent. If you're going to have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday, then have it on all the Wednesdays for Lent. If you're not going to have it on the other Wednesdays for Lent, then there is no reason to have it on Ash Wednesday, because Ash Wednesday is not a feast day. It is not an important day. The feast days that the Lutherans celebrate were days that had to do with the life of Christ, like the Annunciation, the conception of Christ, the visitation of Christ to Mary, Pentecost, Ascension, Easter, Christmas, the circumcision of Christ, the baptism of Christ, Transfiguration, Trinity Sunday. These were the feast days because they were something that had to do with the life of Christ. And so we make a big deal out of those days because they help remind us of the birth, death, and resurrection of Christ. They help us to focus on particular events in the life of Christ. This is why we have the church calendar year anyway, that we start with Christmas and we go through to Easter and then through to Pentecost, following on from the birth of Christ through to the death and resurrection, the ascension, Pentecost, and the going out of the Word of God into the world. We have this calendar that follows the life of Christ, and it helps us to remember the life of Christ, and those particular days draw our attention to the works of Christ. But what day does Ash Wednesday point us to? The season of Lent can point us to the 40 days of Christ in the wilderness. The season of Lent can point us to the whole ministry of Christ in the preparation from his baptism up to his crucifixion. But Ash Wednesday doesn't serve any particular special significance. Ash Wednesday is not some special day in the life of Christ. It's merely the first day of Lent. The only reason we call it Ash Wednesday is because the Catholics started doing this practice of the imposition of ashes on the first Wednesday of Lent, and that gave Ash Wednesday its namesake. Ash Wednesday is not anything special. It's not something important, and therefore there is no reason to have Holy Communion on that Wednesday. And if you do think there is some important reason of having Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday, then why not have it on all the other Wednesdays? So you could make an argument that any time we gather in the church, we should be having Holy Communion, even if it's a midweek Lenten service. Well, in that case, have Holy Communion on every midweek Lenten service, not just Ash Wednesday. Have it on all the Wednesdays of Lent. And if you're not going to have it on the other Wednesdays in Lent, why are you having it on Ash Wednesday? What makes Ash Wednesday so special that it gets to have Holy Communion and all the other Wednesdays don't have Holy Communion? Like I said, it's an adiaphora whether you have communion on Ash Wednesday or not, but I think people do need to stop and think about these things and think about why we are doing that, and also what was the practice of the early Lutherans. Did the early Lutherans have communion on Ash Wednesday? No, because it wasn't a feast day. Did the early Synodical Conference have Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday? No, because it wasn't a feast day. Why do we now today do things that the early Lutherans didn't do? What makes us do things that they didn't want to do? Why did they not do it? Why do we want to do it? Or why should we do it? Why shouldn't we do it? This is not really a video saying what you should or shouldn't do. It's really some food for thought and giving you my own thoughts on the matter as to why I will not be having Holy Communion on Ash Wednesday. And now I know this video is not going to come out on Ash Wednesday because I'm recording it on Ash Wednesday, just because I saw these discussions and that going on Facebook, and so I haven't actually recorded these videos before Ash Wednesday so that they'd be ready for Ash Wednesday. I've made these videos in response to Ash Wednesday, and so this video is going to come out a little later after Ash Wednesday. So I hope the video is still relevant even though it won't be out on Ash Wednesday, but I've been your host, Reverend Jake Zabel. Goodbye and God bless.